Today on Political Trade Secrets, we're going to be talking about breaking the news, clicks, chaos, and censorship, how business media really works. Thank you. This is the live stream for Political Trade Secrets, and we're now going out to about 15 different platforms live across the internet. And we thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're going to be talking about a lot of economic news, business media. Our guest is Dennis Kneale, formerly of CNBC, Fox Business, was an anchor there, previously at Wall Street Journal and Forbes. He's been covering business and economics news for decades, and is going to be pulling back the curtain and showing us how all that really works. Over the on Friday, we had the Dow hit 50,000, and we have the media though, and the way they cover things may not give people the same impression of how the economy actually is going compared to what reality is. Additionally, we have some other news coming up soon. We're going to have a possible another government shutdown, so we talk about that as well. And really great insights. I'd like to talk to Dennis about his thoughts about Kevin Warsh, Trump's new pick for the Fed, and how that's going to change things and have a united front on the economic policies. A lot of different things that we can be talking about during the show. So wherever you are, if you're watching the program, whatever social media platform, do please like, follow, and subscribe. If you follow us on Facebook or X, then you do get notified when we do the live stream, and you can be part of the conversation. So if you post a comment or a question, I'll do my best to answer you and bring you into the conversation as well. And then whatever podcast platform you enjoy the show on, do like, follow, and subscribe. It does definitely help out the show, makes a difference. I'm going to be posting in our polling club soon my take on the new Harvard-Harris poll that just came out, and what it says about the public's views on the economy as well as immigration. Some things have changed, but for the most part, things haven't changed too much. And then also some insights about how government shutdowns work. So thank you very much. We are getting close to the live stream. We appreciate you being here and for joining the show. If you'd like that information at the Polling Club community, go to pollingclub.com. With that, here we are. We're going to go live with the show.
Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
Pollster and host of the Political Trade Secrets podcast, Dustin Olson.
Dustin Olson.
Dustin Olson.
And Dustin Olson, pollster at American Pulse. They work for both Republicans and Democrats. And he hosts a podcast, Political Trade Secrets. Oh, we love that. We like that podcast.
Now, from Washington, D.C., is pollster Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. It's great to have you here. We're going to be getting into some important stories, how business media works. We're going to be talking about business-related topics, and with our great guest, Dennis Kneale, who is the author of the book, The Leadership Lessons of Elon Musk, and be getting his insights from his years working in CNBC and Fox Business as doing business media. So looking forward to that. If you enjoy Political Trade Secrets, please do like, share, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever it is. We do appreciate you participating in this conversation. If you're watching the live stream of this, you can join the conversation at any point. You can post comments, questions, and we will be in there to respond to whatever comments that you have to make. So thank you very much for participating. But without further ado, my guest today is Dennis Kneale. He's an award-winning journalist, media strategist, host of the What's Bugging Me podcast, and he was, as I mentioned before, anchor at CNBC, I believe Power Lunch, and Fox Business Network, and author of The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. We'll also talk to him about his upcoming book that's going to be coming out in the future, and just tapping into his expertise and pulling back the curtain on his experience in the media. Without further ado, on with the show. Dennis, it's great to have you here.
Hello, Dustin. It's great to see you. I am talking to you from South Florida. I just moved here after 43 years in Brooklyn, drove down and set up shop 2 weeks ago, and still have barely even begun unpacking boxes. But you see my new kind of back view, which used to be all apartment buildings and stores and restaurants, and now it's a golf course.
Well, I was shocked when I saw that because when I met you in the green room at Newsmax, and I thought that looks like way too nice of weather for the Northeast right now. So, congratulations to you for making the relocation, and it does look beautiful there.
Yeah, just in time.
So you told me this morning you were in New York City and you were at Newsmax and talking about a couple of topics that are in the news right now, business related topics.
Yeah.
One in particular, Kevin Warsh just named as the likely next chair of the Fed, and then also the shutdown. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts about Kevin Warsh? And
the Warsh pick is absolutely brilliant. And don't take my word for it. Let's go to the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Now, the truth is, I worked at the Wall Street Journal 16 years. I love that op-ed pages there, but they hate President Trump. Okay. They criticize him every chance they get. And they came out and said that this pick of Kevin Warsh was his best pick of his second administration. That's high praise from a bunch of guys that really don't like Trump all that much. And so Warsh, the interesting thing though, is that he's not solely in charge of whether to cut interest rates the way Trump wants them cut. He's got to persuade something like 18 other members of the policy committee to go along with this. And these are members of a committee of the Fed, which this guy, Kevin Warsh, has been criticizing for 10 to 15 years. Only a year ago, in a speech, Warsh said, central bankers should not be pampered princes. Well, he's kind of given a message to the Fed right there, which of course is under investigation for building $1 billion.
Taj Mahal on the Potomac.
Yeah, exactly. So the guy really has some moxie, doesn't he? And that's going to overcome this worry that maybe he's just Trump's toady. Maybe he won't be independent.
Yeah.
This guy advised Bernanke when Bernanke ran the Fed, and then he separated with him publicly and criticized Bernanke, a mentor of his, a boss of his, for continuing with bond purchases that kept rates artificially low on government treasuries and allowed the government to spend more and more without having to really pay for it. So he actually broke with Bernanke over that. He'll break with Trump if he needs to, but this guy has wanted this job for over a decade. Oh, one more thing on this, Dustin. It was kind of funny because Trump, because he was the apprentice and he was on TV, he knows ratings, he knows camera, he knows the business. And so in 2017, when they were pushing Warsh for this job, he said, the guy's too young. Look at him. He looks like just a young pup. This time, though, he says the other day, supported in the Journal, he's a good-looking guy. He's really pretty good there. So he's judging that you want a person who's delivering the right message, but also who's maybe easy on the eyes.
Yeah, he's made for the cameras. And, that Bernanke point, it's interesting you bring that up. I've heard a number of people talk about that. How did that go over at the time? Was that kind of Bernanke was okay with it, or did
I'm sure he was quite upset. The Fed is the one entity in government I see that greets all criticism of it as a threat to its independence, and which makes it appear rather fragile instead of strong. Its independence makes it so strong that it should be able to weather criticism happily and respond to it. But instead, you always get this, oh my God, how dare they? How dare they? And Trump gets worse treatment than ever. Witness the hypocrite, Thin Lizzy Pocahontas, Senator Warren, saying this is terrible. He's a terrible pick, when she only a few months ago was second guessing the Fed and saying they should not be cutting a quarter point today. They should be cutting 75 basis points. Well, what happened to the Fed's independence then, Lizzie?
Yeah. I'm curious. So yes, he has to persuade the other governors, right, on the Fed board, but he also will be in charge of policy for the main headquarters and the personnel and all that kind of stuff too, right?
Yeah, sure. But he's exceptionally well equipped to do this because he served on the Fed board, left, and he knows how it works, and he sees what things are wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
he's also been in private enterprise now. He worked with this famed management consultant, Druckenmiller, a famed investor. Okay, he worked with him. He was at the White House during the first part of the Obama administration in the 08-09 meltdown. And that was one of the scariest times. And the Fed performed incredibly well during that. Instead of tightening up everything and pulling in your elbows, it just flooded the system with money and liquidity to make it move. And it saved things and stopped them from getting even worse. So this guy's battle tested, and he's a pretty darn good pick. But, will those other board of governor members forgive him for his past criticism? The Wall Street Journal ran a collection of about 6 or 7 different critical things the guy has said about the Fed dating back to 2016.
Well, so the question I have, though, is with that being actually in the leadership role and having control over personnel, will there be changes like economists there and really the kind of the I'm sure like most institutions is ossified.
I think that place is so ivory towered, so separate from everything else, that I really don't think he would dare go in and suddenly start firing a lot of people. They should be firing a lot of people. They don't need nearly as many analysts as they have. AI and software sifting can take care of an awful lot of that. And so many of them have been so wrong so often that they even had to raise rates, 4 times in a row, multiple quarters of a point every time, meant they were catching up to something that they ran far behind. And so their track record isn't very good, and they're way too much academic, and they don't know the real world well enough. And that's been a problem in the past.
Well, so it's obvious that you're passionate about these topics in the business world and in media. What got you into this part of the media and becoming a journalist?
Right.
The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fox Business, CNBC. Like why did you decide to do that?
Well, you know what, you go where opportunity lies. And, there's this old song, 50 years old, probably, got to love the one you're with.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who comes after you and wants you. And so starting out, I decided at age 10 to be a newspaper reporter because in 5th grade, Mr. Campbell read out my essay to the 25 students in class, and they had to sit there and listen to every word. And I just thought, I want to tell stories and I want people to listen to them. Yeah. And so that made me be a newspaper reporter. But originally I was just going to try to go back to the Washington Post. I interned there and be a national, correspondent or something someday. And then the Wall Street Journal wrote a letter to me. They read some stories that I had entered in the Pulitzer Prize. I was nominated for a Pulitzer at a very young age, it's 24. Cool. And they wrote a letter asking me to send a copy of it because there was not email back then at all. And so I had to send them through snail mail a copy of my big clip, on this amnesia victim left for dead in the woods in Fort Lauderdale. She's been in a mental hospital for months, but no one's claimed her. Who is she? Wow. She doesn't remember. Incredible story, right? Man, if I'd come on that later in my career, I would have surfed that baby for a movie deal and reality show. Anyway, but that brought me up to the Wall Street Journal. And then suddenly everything in a moment changes because the Journal came to me. And so I ended up becoming this business reporter. Wow. And it was just a wonderful career because you're trying to get people to listen to the things that you want them to know. And the way you do that is by telling them stories about people. So there's this CEO. He raised $100 million to do this internet thing. You won't believe what happened next.
Yeah.
Suddenly people are sitting up and listening because it's a story about a guy.
That's awesome. What would you say about the typical business reporter and their understanding of business? And how did you go about learning about business?
Well, I think a big problem is that a lot of the young reporters today, and even in my era at the Journal, I left the Journal in 98, they're suspicious of business.
Yeah. When
instead they should prize business, celebrate business, root for business. They ought to be like sports reporters for the hometown team.
Yeah.
Because businesses do well, the economy does well. If the economy does well, everyone can do well. And when we were at the Journal, they were almost like in favor of regulators coming in and cracking down on those businesses, by golly. That was the reporters. Then on the editorial page side, the opinion side, you've got them celebrating wealth creation and capitalism. Nowadays, I think most business reporters would say, yeah, Jeff Bezos is worth way too much money. No one should be allowed to be worth $250 billion. But wait, he created a company, Amazon, with a market cap of over $2 trillion.
Yeah.
That means 1.8 trillion is held in wealth by other people, by nurses' pension funds that invested in the stock, by investors. It's made millionaires of thousands of investors. It employs, is it 1.2 or 2 million people who have jobs. And don't complain to me if you think you're exploited. Go find another job. You don't have to work for them. They're paying $20 an hour.
And if you like your Prime deliveries, that's all happening too.
That made your life better, getting incredibly high quality goods at a real reasonable price, right? In a day. I mean, and so if the price we have to pay is that, oh, it's so obscene that he's worth 250 billion, the guy did so much more for so many other people.
Now, why is that? So basically what it sounds like you're saying is that it's the editorial page. They're the ones who are the free market people, but the regular reporters are not liberal. Much different than the other reporters at all the other papers.
It's just so liberal, all of them, and all the papers, almost all these outlets. They're just so, it's what they were trained in. You know, we're seeing the result of 20 years or 30 years in academia, you know, churning out liberal. You know, I gave a speech at a journalism class a year or two ago in New York, and I was shocked that they told me they were being taught that there are certain things where there's only one truth, and you shouldn't even bother exploring the other side.
Wow. Like
climate change. How dare you deny climate change? Well, we're seeing more and more that they have been doing this for 30 or 40 years, warning us about this crisis. And the very people screaming crisis profit by screaming crisis. They raise more money. They get more headlines. They get more grants.
Yep.
And they're self-interested in doing that. They get money for solar, which otherwise can't compete. And so, you know, reporters stopped being a watchdog and started being more of a lapdog. And so they rarely take a look at their coverage of the Twitter files. Now, the Twitter files was the biggest single government scandal involving the First Amendment in our entire history as a country.
Yeah,
the federal government silenced the accounts of thousands of Americans on social media, Americans that millions of other Americans had the right to hear if they wanted to. But the government stopped all the platforms from doing it. It continues to censor all of them except X right now. Now, usually when there was any government incursion on First Amendment, look at the coverage of Don Lemon. Oh, they arrested him. It's a violation of the First Amendment. Well, I did more stories on the Twitter files scandal and expose of government violation of First Amendment rights than the entire staffs of the New York Times and the Washington Post combined. They didn't cover it at all. Yep. Where were you? They didn't care because it was the voices of conservatives. But next time around, when Republicans run a hat trick with a really wide margin, it's going to be you guys who get silenced. And you should have fought against it, and shame on you for not doing it. I don't recognize the media that I worked with and alongside for over 30 years. I don't recognize them anymore. They turned into shameless shills.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad to see it. And by the way, I ensure that I never will get hired again by them for daring to say it, but someone had to, and they weren't hiring me anyway.
Yeah. Well, the Twitter files is breathtaking, and the fact that, and I'm sure in your book you go into this in great detail with Elon Musk purchasing Twitter. I mean, that really was a watershed moment for the First Amendment. And I know for myself, I was listed as one of the people who was shadow banned in one of the files. Yes. So that where D. Olson was. And it just, you know, that was my experience. Like you basically were, you know, it was like a tree fell in the forest and nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, and then there's an irony here. I guess this would count. Usually people misuse the word irony. Mm-hmm. They mean coincidentally.
Yeah.
Okay. But an irony is something that's the opposite of what you expected or what you're saying. It's the opposite. Well, I have chapter 6, free speech is everything in the leadership genius of Elon Musk. And here's how he bought Twitter and he freed it. And it's the most important platform in the world. They've just silenced my account a couple weeks ago permanently. They won't let me speak. They won't let me comment on retweets.
Really?
I don't even understand what I did wrong. Something that regarding inauthentic behavior, but I have no idea. And I've appealed and I haven't reached a human being. I think it's all done by algos.
Yeah, Grok is in charge of their customer service.
But here it's supposed to be the most freest platform, and I celebrate it and praise Elon, and now I've been silenced.
Oh my gosh.
What a flop.
That's amazing. Well, I in preparation for this interview, I was looking for your Twitter account. I couldn't, your X account. I was like, is this it? But it's
off the search now. I mean, and here's how bad. Understand, They stopped me from, I shall never be allowed to open another account ever again.
Wow.
I'm not allowed to retweet. I'm not allowed to quote on top of tweet. I'm not allowed to follow. I spent, lots of effort building up from 10,000 to 70,000 followers in the past couple of years. They've wiped it out to zero.
Wow.
If I try to follow account, I cannot follow the account. My God, what have I done? You let Donald Trump back on the platform and he was accused of fomenting an insurrection of the federal government, but you're blocking me and I can't even open another account? What the hell? It's so weird.
We'll need to clip this for the clips and put this out there on X and see what happens.
Yeah,
And
please.
if anybody notices, that's fascinating. Well, that's the problem with all of this tech.
Automation and
Yeah. I know for years, we own one of our companies is an advertising company in the political space, and we had the heck of a time with Meta being able to advertise, and we would always have to deal with algorithms and robots in order to get approved, and you just never know. And I do think that once you get to a certain level, a certain size, that's pretty much how things work. And I know when we deal with X, it's all bots until you can get to a real person. It's incredibly frustrating. Well, I'm sorry that's happened, and you've championed his work. So let's. Before we go into that, something I'm just so curious about when I watch the business media. In talking about the reporters who are left leaning, they have the op-ed page that's more ideological on the other side. But I just get the sense that there's like this underground war that's happening. Like every billionaire needs to have their own business media of some sort. And you mentioned, we're talking about Elon Musk. The Wall Street Journal, it feels like they have to have an article at least once a week that has a pot shot at Elon Musk.
Yes.
And it's almost like they're all just taking their media empires and punching each other.
They hate him almost as much as they hate Trump. And then when they two got together, that is that old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Mm-hmm. Those two come together. They're hated by the same people. I mean, I can't believe how they hound Musk. And, they did these stories last year and the year before. He's on ketamine. Oh, my God. Meanwhile, the Tesla stock's up 50% in the previous 12 months. Well, let him get on more ketamine. Yeah, incredible. Well, so I should wait, though, for an actual question. Go ahead. What about?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm getting to is that it seems like there's kind of this unseen war that happens within media in general, but also the business media, where if you own your business network or business paper, that you basically take pot shots at the other billionaires, or that there's a whole underground war going on of trying to build up this stock or trying to build up this business or take down this other business.
Okay, so I think where I can come land on something in there is that today, and it's much different from how it was even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I've been out of the mainstream media 10 years now. But today, it is so much more driven by the need for clicks and to get attention. And so that means that everything you do as a content creator, as a reporter, is going to be that much more energized or more melodramatic or more sensational or more aimed at being flippant or mean, something, anything to get to get attention, to bring attention to yourself. And so it becomes less about, wow, this is a compelling story. I've really got to tell this. I want people to know it. And more about, oh my God, I have to bring in 200,000 clicks per month and I'm only at 80,000. What can I do to get clicks? Yeah. That tail wagging the dog has destroyed parts of journalism. And it's why you see entire news items just because of a post some prominent person made to X, when it's one of 6,000 posts every second of every minute of every hour of the day on X. Why would any one post from anyone be worth an entire story?
Yeah.
Well, when you need clicks, it is.
It's with everything can make it happen.
And then it's made it far more personal and opinionated because you've got to have attitude. You can't do a post on X or any of the other outlets saying, well, on one hand, some people say the shutdown is an empty threat. But on the other hand, others say, no, you've got to be one or the other. I mean, if there were a middle left for the market, for opinion, for news, for advertisers, someone would be serving it. But today it's either far right or left, especially far left.
Well, I from working in politics, I have a sense for how that leaves the American public as far as the voter. What's the impact on the American consumer when media and business media in particular is like that?
Well, one thing is there's a gap between how things really are and versus how consumers feel they are, because they're getting their news from the mainstream media, and the mainstream media refuse to tell the full story of how incredible this economy is right now.
Yep.
Let's remember, everyone in the mainstream media, all the pixel pundits, all the guests on CNBC, everyone so wrong in April 2025, new Trump tariffs. The worst policy decision by any president in 95 years, Jeremy Siegel of Wharton said on CNBC. And stocks were up 50% in the next few months after that. Despite that, they were all wrong about that. And it's because they're blinded by their hatred of Trump. And so even in the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, the people are blinded by their love of Trump or their hatred of him. When you break down their expectations among consumers in the UMich survey for inflation rate, supporters of the Democrats say, oh yeah, it's going to be over 6% per year.
Yep.
3 times what it really is. But then just as bad, the Trump lovers say, it's only going to be up, 0.5%. Well, both are bogus. And I don't think most of the people responding believe in those numbers. It's just they're trying to rig the results and trying to hurt Trump or help Trump. And so your entire political economic forecasting and your data, sentiment data, are kind of deranged and kind of skewed by this political split, when in fact we just had fourth quarter GDP growth of 5.2% are the estimates. That's more than double the national growth rates of the last 10 or 20 years annually. That's on top of third quarter, 4-point-something%, on top of second quarter, which is like 3-point-something%, unheard of.
It is remarkable. And you expect from a public opinion perspective, which is what we track, and you're absolutely right, what people see and how they feel is totally different than the reality. Though there are numbers where you do see some glimmers of hope. But you think about that trajectory, that is going to have a lagging impact on public opinion, because at some point your eyes don't match what you're being told.
Right.
In the media. And do you think that that's going to happen eventually?
Well, it's all up to the administration, and will they do a good enough job selling it and finding a way to get that message to the people? I love President Trump. I voted for him 3 times. I met the man twice before he ever ran for president, and he was so decent to me and likable both times that I will spend the rest of my life defending the guy no matter how bad he is to everyone else, because it's my personal experience, okay? And yet his speeches are rambling. He needs to pull a Reagan and get out a chart and saying this was inflation before and this is now. This is eggs and now. I just drove down through 6 or 7 states, New York down to Florida, and gas in a lot of those states was $2.50, $2.11 a gallon.
Yep.
When people start feeling that on their pulse point, no matter what the media are saying, they might feel better than we realize. Every president's lost the midterms and lost seats, okay? And the Republicans will, and they may lose a lot. But I'm wondering if there's going to be a huge surprise to the upside instead, because people are sick of the immigration backlash stuff, and because they are feeling better on price of eggs, price of gasoline, that kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the graphs. He did try to do that in his December speech, and a lot of the mainstream media took out the graphics. But you're suggesting actually just hold them up so that people that they have to see
and start and narrow your focus and start talking more about it. He rambles. That's part of his trademark. He's got a prompter. He'll read 2 paragraphs, and
it's called the weave.
And I say like this one time, and then he's riffing all over the place. But no, you need to. But there is no reining him in. You don't dare try to rein him in.
Now, I will tell you, so the when we recorded this, the Harvard-Harris survey for January had just come out. It was late for the year. And I was actually able to spend some time this morning going through and reviewing that. And on the economic factors, there's still concerns about tariffs and whatnot. But on people's view of the economy, the net improvement is +4 currently from month over month, which is actually pretty notable. And it was about the same from the month before. Now,
Dustin, That's in the face of all of this media criticism and complaint and protest and all of the sturm and drang. It's a +4 despite all of that. And so just imagine if he had the media on his side.
And also, I would say Harvard-Harris poll is a good poll of all the public polls. It's the one I have the most confidence in. It's an all online panel poll, which means that 100% of the people are compensated to participate, which is not my favorite thing.
Right.
But they do a sample of samples, which, you know, that's statistical stuff, but it makes it a little bit better. Anyhow, it's a more credible poll. This January poll is actually leans a little bit more Democrat by 2-3%. So that's also accounting for that, which is going to happen on any survey. It means that there's been positive movement. Another thing, I always tell people, don't believe what the media is telling you, because on immigration, there's nothing substantially changed. One of the most popular policies of the administration, which is close to around 70%, I think 73%, approve of the Trump administration's removing illegal immigrants who've committed a crime while here. They approve of that. And when you go to removing everyone, it's still about 52 or 54%. So it's been consistent throughout. It's been remarkably so. Now, people do have concerns now about ICE for obvious reasons, but overall, the policies, those have remained basically the same as they have the whole year, which is amazing because you wouldn't believe that based off of what you've seen in the news.
Well, but also, did you see those numbers that ran on X where Obama, I think he deported more than 2 million illegals in his tenure, and Clinton, exported 1 point something million, and then in comes Trump with a lower number, and yet vastly more outrage. And that's the weird thing about the opposition to Trump and the opposition from the extreme left is they're so ridiculously hypocritical that they could have thousands of people marching for pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine after the October 7th terrorist attacks on Israel, and yet they're not marching at all when 16,000 or 20,000 or by some estimates 80,000 Iranians have been murdered by the government. Where are you guys? How can you not care? I mean, it just shows you that they're a bunch of paid shills and they're in the pockets of whatever financing forces who are not against the Iranian government. And apparently they're in favor of it. And hence, that's why they're not marching. It's just embarrassing for these people.
But it seems like some of the people who are on that side of things, they are also possibly influenced by Iran. I'm curious. So with the leadership lessons of Elon Musk book, we saw a year ago around this time, we saw the fire bombings of Tesla dealerships, same group of people. Now you're also working on a new book, Oregoners, and
you're linked, believe it or not, Dustin.
What's
one
that?
led to the other, because I was writing The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, and I offer 11 lessons of Elon for a better life, better career, right? And I've become fascinated with him and how much he just really fears and despises this woke mind virus, and became more interested in that. And then you look at what happened last fall. Trump says, I want to send in 200 National Guard troops to the federal ICE site in Portland, Oregon. It's been under siege from Antifa folks late at night for like 100 nights in a row. So just those said, no, oh my God, they go to the Supreme Court to stop this. They have the governor, the mayor of Portland, the entire congressional delegation, both U.S. senators in Oregon, all come out against this terrible invasion and violation. When meanwhile, the people in the city of Oregon are saying, city of Portland are saying, enough of this. I want safe streets. I'm tired of walking past homeless tents and people smoking, methamphetamine. Then the place is falling apart. And it's this same woke mind virus. As one guy there told me, we reward terrible behavior and we punish good behavior. They have 7,000 homeless in the city, but the metro area spends $700,000 a year on the homeless, keeping them homeless rather than getting them off the street. If you get them off the street, your NGO charity that gets $100 million a year in grants from the government will go out of business.
Exactly.
So it's crazy.
So what had you decide to do the Oregoners book? Like, this is, as far as I know, you're from Southern Florida.
I grew up in South Florida, and then I've been in Brooklyn for 40 years. Yeah, just watching from afar. And here's the thing. When you have, here's what a Democrat operative there told me. When you have this Democrat supermajority for 10 years and a Democrat majority for 20 years, but now it's so super that they need no Republicans for anything.
Yep.
And the Republicans have just turned into this kind of wilted Washington Generals basketball team that gets paid to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yep.
Okay. Well, there's no accountability. There's no way to assess failure. And just because all they care about is, do they keep getting reelected? And they do. And so an outsider has to come in there maybe and do the equivalent of what Whoopi Goldberg did with Demi Moore in the movie Ghost. He said, Molly, you in danger, girl. I can go in there and say, Oregon, you're in danger, man. Oregon, you're not supposed to say Oregon, but I keep calling it Oregoners because people are leaving. Look, all right, Tim Boyle is CEO of Columbia Sportswear. He's in his 70s now. I met him real quick when I was there. He's worth $1.7 billion. If he dies in his beloved state of Oregon, the state will take something like 8 or 10% of all the money he has over the first $1 million. His heirs will lose like $100 million just because he happened to die there instead of moving to, say, Florida, which has no income tax state income tax and no state estate tax. So just terrible. They're taxing so much. Okay, they passed this one tax, and the county that has Portland say, hey, preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds, yeah, let's get them started early. And they raised hundreds of millions of dollars by taxing something like, I think it's 7.75% of all your income over $125,000. Mm-hmm. Well, in 3 years of that tax in that county, the 1,000 richest taxpayers left. They quit the state because they said, screw this. It's just another tax. Portland has the second highest tax rates combined with state, city, local in the entire country after only New York. And in Portland, you'll wait 20 minutes for the police to respond to a violent 911 call.
So on these protests that happen there's only a few cities in this country where it seems like they're ready-made. They pop them up really quickly. Minneapolis is one of them, obviously. Portland. You see stuff happen in New York City and LA, but that's not super surprising. Those are major cities for the country. Why is it that Portland is like that, Minneapolis is like that, and who are the people behind these? Like, what are the organizations? Because these are obviously, this is orchestrated.
Yes, I'm looking at some of this now, and it's so obviously orchestrated. A couple examples for you. All right, so at the ICE site in Portland, it's known that NGOs, they own some space nearby, and Antifa activists are storing their signs, their equipment, whatever they need, radio gear, masks, shields. They're storing it in these places rented by the NGOs. And some of them are literally employees of these NGOs. All right. So there's really this overlap between NGOs and these illegal activists who, at this ICE site, they've tried to shine laser lights into the eyes of pilots, helicopter pilots that are landing at the site. They have assaulted journalists, conservative journalists. They've assaulted, anti-protesters. And yet the local police have done nothing. The local police have threatened to arrest a regular driver who dared to kind of drive onto a street that Antifa had blocked. So there is this complicit kind of cooperation going on among them. Now, in 2020, Oregon voters passed Measure, I think it was 111, 211, or whatever, Measure 11. Anyway, all drugs are hereby legalized, all hard drugs. And a Soros group puts $6 or $7 million versus $80,000 on the other side into this in favor, because they love to experiment with democracy in Portland. Oh, yay, and Oregon. Of course. One of the first states to do sanctuary city, sanctuary state, et cetera, et cetera. And, well, my God, overdoses of drugs were like 500 per year since 2010. Rocketed over 1,000 instantly the very year they approved it, the following year. And then another even higher, 1,300 the following year. Just incredible, just awful, total chaos as a result of this voter-approved initiative. And the state had to come in 2024 and peel it back. And yet today, I drove past a place in Portland 3 fentanyl pills sold for $1 a piece.
Are you serious?
Okay, yes, 3. Now that's a value. And
Wow.
their drug use is allowed, and there are no arrests, and there's no jail space for it. And so de facto, it's as if they're all legalized anyway. And I've been told it's going to take 10 to 20 years. A prosecutor told me in Oregon, a former prosecutor who just left and moved to Florida, he was so frustrated with the state. He's an Oregoner, and he told me it's going to take 10 to 20 years to offset these effects. It's been so bad.
That's crazy. One of my business partners at American Pulse is an Oregoner. He moved to Hawaii, the conservative state of Hawaii, to get out of Oregon.
Did he? How long ago?
See, it's been probably 4 years.
I'd like to interview him. I'm looking for examples of people who've left,
Absolutely,
why they left, and how their life differed after they left. Change is hard, man. It's hard. I mean, there are some people there who are trapped. Charles Froelich, for 30 years, has owned the Froelich Art Gallery downtown. Well, homeless people were allowed to just move in, and they just kind of took over the front steps in 2020 during COVID, et cetera. And he would like to move. He hates what the city's become. He hates the break-ins and the crime. And yet, how would he ever set up? He has no connections elsewhere if he moves to another state. How does he start over at this point? The same for Amy Nichols, who owns the Cheerful Tortoise and the Cheerful Bullpen sports bars that have been in the same place for roughly 75 years. She's owned them for close to 20 years, but she feels like I can't just pick up and go. How do I start over? So there are people there who would leave if they could, but they're trapped.
yeah. Well, it makes sense. It's home. So one of the things I don't think a lot of people know, you mentioned the Soros network, talked about the NGOs. I'm curious about what NGOs, but one of the early issues that George Soros actually got involved in was decriminalizing drugs, and just having that was one of his big things, ending the war on drugs. A lot of the policies, I think he started this in the late 80s, early 90s. This is one of his legacies, besides like mass migration and things like that. This is something that he took on early on. And
Right.
I think back at times, libertarians and other people saying the war on drugs is a failure. I think we're watching Donald Trump prove that to be wrong. I think there's just very powerful forces that were trying to convince people that these things didn't work, and they changed policies. And we see that when you make it easily available, you have all these fentanyl overdoses. And in some ways, it's a form of warfare from our opposition around the world.
I totally agree with you on that. And I was shocked that the media never covered it that way. China was clearly letting these chemicals be used to create fentanyl, to kill Americans and create as much pain as they could. Let's remember that the New York Times once estimated that for every person who died of COVID, there were 200 people who felt loss, that they were close to that person in some way. So when you look at 100,000 people dying each year in the past few years of COVID, that's more than we lost in 8 years of the Vietnam War. We lost 58,000, I think it was, in the Vietnam War every single year. And then you think that 200 times 200,000, which would be either 2 million or 20 million people feeling a sense of loss for these deaths. It's shocking. And we just let it go on because, in part, hey, if you die of an overdose of fentanyl, a street drug, and you're using illicit drugs that are illegal, shame on you. We're not going to mourn you. And yet we should be mourning them because that's a terrible loss.
Yeah, well, obviously with fentanyl, if it's something that's laced with fentanyl, someone was using another drug that they didn't realize had something in it that ultimately killed them. It's a travesty, but it's the same people. They're pushing mass migration, same people who are orchestrating the stuff in Minneapolis, the same kind of organizations. So these NGOs, when you say that, are these organizations that might be getting our tax dollars as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a anti-hunger program in Portland that I'm told gets over $100 million per year. Okay. And yet Portland's had a 64 or 67% increase in the homeless over the last 2 years. I had that former DA tell me this morning, I was just on a call with him, and he said, look, Oregon has decided it wants to become the ultimate welfare state. He said, riffraff knows to come to Oregon because you have great benefits. You can get some shelter. You can get on the state dole for income. And so it's become a destination for people who are drug addicted, people who are homeless. In Oregon, they have this thing of bodily autonomy. Okay. It's your body. Hey, man, if you want to use drugs, by golly, we'll have to just make sure that you're comfortable and that you have access to clean needles, by golly. Instead of thinking, you know what, you've created your own troubles and you need to get yourself out of them with personal responsibility. It's not like that. They literally say they want to take care of everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone shouldn't be taking care of government. Those who are incapable of taking care of themselves, sure. But 30% higher rate of people on SNAP benefits in Oregon, even though it's the 16th or 20th richest state in the country, a 30% higher rate. And apparently, one guy told me 25% of them are single able-bodied men.
Wow.
25 years old.
That's destroying someone's soul to be in that situation. And they're attracting that. They're changing their population to being like that. It's really it's demoralizing for the state. And I know a lot of people I mentioned this to you before, that we're going to be rolling out a series of surveys in the state about these kinds of issues, and people can stay tuned. We'll make sure that people on Political Trade Secrets learn about that, and that you can use those as well. But it's clearly a state that is further beyond where most blue states have gone, and
they coal mine to show where those states are going to go if they don't fix themselves. But you're doing this at such a key time, Dustin, because more than ever before, Oregon voters are rising up, aren't they? And they are pushing back against the super liberal supermajority. Look at what happened with that Department of Transportation tax. They're supposed to raise 78,000 signatures. They got 250,000.
And this, I've heard, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, their legislative session starts soon. The governor might try to pull back the tax and then
and she had
forward.
To
and then those signatures won't count.
Well, she pulled that and decided, let's repeal it. But then new opinions came out legally saying, actually, even if you repealed this law, that she'd insisted, it's an emergency, call a special session, pass it late at night. Oh, it's an emergency. But then she just wants them to repeal it. And they said, no, even if you repeal it, the voters get to vote on this ballot effort that they just raised those signatures for. So now she may move back off of that. But, she was trying to avoid a politically devastating thing. And that is her reelection for a second term in November 26th being on the same ballot as this proposal to overturn the tax increase that she personally pushed through. And if you decide you've never voted before, but you want to vote against that tax increase, and you're there, are you going to vote for her? No,
of course not.
You're going to vote against her.
Now, unfortunately, though, I think that Oregon's going to have to hit rock bottom, and they're not quite there yet. And it's going to take a little bit more. That's my gut.
A lot of people have told me that in Oregon, 2 or 3 different people. And, when I was a journal reporter and you were going out for a big page 1 story that's going to take weeks and weeks to report, when you started hearing from 3 or 4 different sources that same observation, that's when you knew you found a real truth. And you're the 3rd or 4th person to tell me that about Oregon.
Absolutely. Well, pivoting to your other book, I want people to be able to go to Amazon and get your current book that's out, The Leadership Lessons of Elon Musk. And what are some of the things that, if you're in politics or you're in media or you're just somebody who's out there in the world, that you can learn and actually apply today from Elon Musk?
Basically, I always ask, what would Elon do? All right. So there's a couple things. First of all, one lesson is most people are loafers. Work harder than you ever have in your life. That's what Elon does. Another lesson is free speech is everything. Stand up and make yourself heard. We are letting too many ridiculous, crazy, bad things going on. And we're afraid to stand up because we're afraid of retaliation. Another lesson is, the most likely outcome in life, Elon likes to say, is the most ironic. That is the opposite of what we expected to happen or what we wanted to make happen. And it's kind of interesting. For example, he's the one who pushed Sam Altman at OpenAI. Hey, I've given you the first $50 million, but you're going to have to raise a lot more. You're going to have to raise $1 billion. And we're founding this to stop Microsoft and Google from taking over AI. Well, Sam is so desperate to raise money, he goes to Microsoft for a $10 billion initial investment deal. So the very opposite of what Elon wanted to happen out of OpenAI ended up happening. So that's lesson 11. Lesson 2 is reduce everything in your life. A Tesla has 10,000 parts. A Ford has 40,000.
Wow.
If you can still run the car without having taken out stuff, you haven't taken out enough. You should take out so much that you can't run it, and now you have to start putting stuff back in. But that goes to your own life. In clutter, clear it out. I've just thrown away 30% of my possessions of the last 40 years by moving, okay? So reduce everything. But here's the weirdest lesson, okay? And it relates to that lesson number 11, ironic entertaining outcomes.
Yep.
And lesson 2, reduce, reduce, reduce. And that is lesson 1. Elon truly believes the chances are very good that we may be living inside a vast
simulation,
a video game. And if so, if it might be true, then what the flip? Just go for it. Take on huge risk. Do things that no one else would dare try, because it might be a game anyway. And if that were a simulation, if it were true, it would take 48 planet Earths, okay, to do a simulation that's good. You can't even tell. If it were true, you got to reduce everything, because you got to reduce storage and information for the computer to work better. So reduce, reduce, reduce. That's lesson 2. And if it were true, they're not running the simulation to have boring outcomes. They're doing it to make it really entertaining.
Of course.
7, the most entertaining outcomes, the most opposite of what you expected. And that would be part of that simulation too. And it changed how I think about the world, because we could take on bigger risks, even if it's not true. And one last thing on that though, Dustin, certainly I would believe that 10,000 years from now, they could definitely invent that simulation that you can't tell.
Totally.
It's just that in the universe is it's like 14 billion years old. That would mean somewhere in the universe, there's 1.4 million spans of 10,000 years. We really think that in 1.4 million chances of 10,000 years, it's never happened yet.
Yep.
I mean,
no, mathematically, it's
very positive.
Yeah.
And then who says we're in the one simulation? We could be in a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation.
And we're creating simulations now as humans. So we're creating simulations within the simulation. If that's
Facebook spent $36 billion, I think it is, on the metaverse, and it's been just a total bust. People want to be in the flesh, man.
Yeah.
If this is the flesh.
Yes, but if you experience it as flesh, then how would you know anything different?
Right.
If it's programmed that way. Those are great. And I actually use the most entertaining outcome all the time, because I say in politics, people are like, oh, that's never happened. Well, a lot of things have never happened. The recount in 2000, that had never happened. Donald Trump on his first try getting elected president, that never happened. Then it happened before the non-consecutive terms, but in the way it happened,
right.
This is all super interesting, and I think he's onto something with that. The more interesting or more.
Yeah, I interviewed a physicist in Europe who actually feels like he's found evidence that it is a simulation. It was a fascinating interview. I did a podcast on it. Yeah.
And if it is a simulation and you're just a player in the game, then in some ways you can be the author of that game, and
you can decide
control
for it even more, because heck, it might be a game. And so take that job that you ordinarily would turn down because it's too risky, maybe, or take that big risk. Set a bold goal. That's the other thing. Another lesson for Elon. He dreams huge, and then he's willing to spend decades pursuing it. He first went to Moscow with a guy I interviewed to try to buy 2 rocket engines. And when the Russians asked him in 2000, what's this for? He said, I want to take it to Mars. They spit on his shoes, okay, because it was such a crazy idea. But, 25 years later, he hasn't been to Mars, but he dominates the launch business, and he destroyed Russia's launch business with his competition. He handles 90% of the launches in the world now, and he's only doing it to get to Mars.
Yep.
Incredible the things that you can do when you set huge goals that no one else will dare set because they don't want to fail.
Everything he's done has been a huge goal. It's pretty amazing. I do think the Doge effort, while it may not have gone as far as a lot of people really wanted it to, the fact that we see what we see in Minneapolis right now, including the crazy riots, is partly because of Doge, because he added it was like a system reboot, this idea
of never been looked at before, right? This stuff had never been looked at. No one had ever raised a ruckus about it. We just kept letting the money go out the door. Doge changed everything, even if it didn't come close to the goals that he set. He set the goal first at $2 trillion in spending cuts, then $1 trillion. But he said it when he was utterly naive about how Washington works. Yeah. And Republicans are feeding it that same trough. They allowed this to go on all this time until they had no choice but to stand up and oppose it.
And the worst thing about the Republicans, as best as I can tell, they just get the crumbs. Like they're not even the biggest hogs at the trough, and they're happy with their crumbs. It's pretty
Yeah,
pathetic.
as long as they just keep getting reelected. And I think a lot of them hate Trump and fear Trump.
Absolutely.
It's the Republicans and the rank and file in the party, the actual Americans. That's where his 95% approval comes from in the Republican Party. But the leadership and those veterans there, they fear him because they were doing just fine with the Democrats.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's one of his biggest legacies for his work in government, I think, is that if we are able to ever uh, deal with our debt, it'll be because of Elon Musk and, of course, Donald Trump. And if we get to Mars, it's going to be because of Elon Musk. If we move away from fossil fuels, which, he's not against fossil fuels, but all of these things, not a single one of his companies is some small idea. Neuralink, that none of these are small ideas. They're all really big moonshots. Right. It is pretty remarkable.
Yeah,
so why not?
About his very first company, this Zip to it or something. When it was, he was about to. He had just graduated and he was going to, I think it was Berkeley or, University of California or something out there. And he quits after only a week or something in class for a PhD in electronics because he wants to get in on the 1999, 2000, the big bubble wave. And so they invent this online listing of local restaurants that merges with a map. Okay, there wasn't even wireless reception by the time, so that you would put these two together and you'd be able to order a pizza by using the map or something, okay? But it ended up becoming for newspapers like the New York Times, the first way they could start getting classifieds for restaurants locally on their new websites.
Wow.
And so it actually did well. I think Compaq bought it or something. And then, but he took that $25 million and instantly invested it in the next thing. And then he sold that. Oh, yeah, eBay bought it. Oh, that was the first X.com, which merged with PayPal. And then eBay bought that. And so he made another oh, my God, I've got this $100 million windfall. And then he just invests all of it into SpaceX. I mean, living on friends' couches.
Yeah. He just bets it all. It's amazing. And it will, I think, save humanity. Well,
Right.
Well, Dennis, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to Oregoners, and people can get the leadership lessons of Elon Musk at Amazon, I'm sure. Where else? Anywhere else?
Buy it. I could use the $3 or $4 that I get on that $30 sale. That book publishing industry, man, they're running a good racket, baby.
Absolutely. Anything else you want people to check out?
Well, please go on X and look at Dennis Kneale, and then just say, why is Dennis Kneale being banned when Dennis is an Elon supporter? Please, I need your support. But otherwise, watch for me on Newsmax. I'm on there 3 or 4 times a week. Life is fun.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing you sometime soon on Newsmax and maybe in the green room again. And thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah. Well, that was Dennis Kneale, author and podcast host and expert in business media and media in general, and really do appreciate him sharing his insights on all sorts of things, business stories, on how the media works, on Elon Musk and Oregon, and all these different topics we were able to talk about today. Hopefully you got a better sense for how your world actually works and got to peek behind the curtain. If you like the show, if you feel like this is providing you value, the way you can help out is to like and subscribe on YouTube, X, Facebook, wherever you enjoy the show. We do appreciate you following us there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.